Right.
Thank you everybody for coming. It's a wonderful turnout and it's wonderful to see you all. And I'm sure that I don't need to introduce my guests, but I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Colin Wiggins, who wrote the text for the exhibition and has kindly agreed to speak with Sharon Hall and Laurence Noga about their work. Colin used to be head of special projects at the National Gallery for many, many years, and he curated exhibitions for Paul Rego, Frank Auerbach, and Anthony Caro. Okay, thank you.
Right. Right. People have been coming up to me saying, have you got lots of interesting questions to ask? And I said, well, no, I haven't. But this is the first time I've seen these works all together. Sharon said in conversation over there half an hour or so ago, yes, it's all about colour. And I thought, no, it isn't. So we're going to have a lively conversation. Now, first of all, I've got the two artists alongside me, whose work does, if you disagree, fine, you can say that later, but whose work does kind of settle down with each other. The work kind of gets on. And it has a sort of dialogue. I think I might even have an imaginary conversation now in my head of the artworks by Laurence and Sharon talking to each other. So this is happening in my head, all right? So if you can't hear it, it's because you're not tuned in to me. But this one here, Diamante, I think it's called, isn't it?
Diamante.
Diamante is looking at Arlington Street.
That's it.
And it's saying, what are you doing here? And Arlington Street saying, well, I'm having an exhibition. I'm in an exhibition here, and I feel we've met before. And Diamante is saying, well, no, we haven't. But I can see we've got things in common with one another. You can see what the works are doing to me. This isn't that conversation in my head now. This is a bit of proper dialogue. They're making me go like this because they've got these shapes. Now, actually, a few minutes ago, I thought, Colin, what you mustn't do is start talking about all those works over there, because all these people will be looking this way. And so I must stop this conversation. But you get what I mean about the work seeming to have things curiously in common, even though when I wrote the text, I mean, briefly to summarise, Laurence's work specifically is about real events and real lives in the past, specifically his mother and father in different places from their past. Sharon's work has more of an apparent detachment from individual human beings, but the theme of the show, time, what was it, Laurence? The shape of time. Obviously, Laurence is about things happening in the past and the work resonating with that. The time passing in Sharon's work is, in a way, for me, the fact that when I look at Sharon's work, I feel that they are details of much bigger work. I don't think the edges of the work are the real ends of the work. I see them as continuing after the end of the canvas or the cotton duck or whatever it is, as if I'm looking into a window on a world that if I were able to put my head through, I would see more of these shapes and colours going on a very long way. And in a way, I can almost imagine moving the frame and finding something else. Has anyone ever said that to you before? I can see the look of perplexment.
No, I don't think of them as windows onto a bigger thing and then being a detail. No, I think the relationships that occur within the format are very much about the space within the painting and its relationship and the tautness and the interaction of colour within the actual format itself.
Right, I understand.
And so in that sense I see them as being quite self-contained as opposed to moving out from the edge of the frame. So I kind of disagree with you, Colin, in a sense.
That's just too bad. Because that's what I really think I could shift them and I'd see what's next. Because there's such a lot of movement in your work.
Yeah, they're absolutely about movement.
There's when you have an edge, that edge is not there. It wants to either do that or do that.
Yeah.
That's what the edges want to do.
There's an instability, yeah.
And as soon as you have two colours together, you create space.
Yeah.
And the two colours will start to argue with each other unless you've got it completely balanced and refined, which is what boring artists do. They have this sort of inner tension that to me is about the passing of time. They are holding a moment and they want to do something else. They're quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's a kind of fluctuating rhythm within them, often a dissonance, yeah.
A dissonance, fluctuating rhythm, that brings us on to a kind of musical content. And Laurence, there's music in your pictures, isn't there?
Yes.
Now, I know that you're all looking this way, but I've just noticed something in that one, which is a piano. The bloody great piano in that one.
I'm glad you noticed.
Right. Now, that is so... No, something else, so figurative.
Where is the piano, sorry?
No, there's one at the top.
That one.
The little one.
The one with the piano in. Yeah, this one here with the windows.
Okay.
And then there's the lid of the piano. And then underneath there's a keyboard that you're looking full on. Now, is that meant to be there? Or is it an accident I'm perceiving that?
Well, I think in a way that they're sort of accidents really, because I'm always thinking about my past and the nostalgia of my past. And I guess my mum sang in these huge bands. She sang the Ivy Benson band, and she fronted the Ivy Benson band. And when I was a kid, that she started going and singing at jazz clubs, I don't know, Ronnie Scott's or I don't know, the Hilton or somewhere nice, right? And but she just bung me in these places, and so I would just end up sort of sitting there, listening in a smoky little part of the club.
Glass of whiskey.
Glass of whiskey, probably. And but I think it kind of just stayed with me in a way. It just filtered into my life, and I think. So if there are shapes in there, which that's fantastic. You thought of that. Perhaps it's kind of it's just something that came out of the making of them as I started to put them together. I've always been really interested in sort of systems and how systems are put together, but I think mainly, in a way, my father had this kind of garage, and he was quite a hoarder really of things and objects. And he had his own system in the garage, and so I suppose he had these fantastic system of packets and doorknobs and other things, and sheet music, my mum's, and so I guess it's that system that is kind of infiltrates my practice in a way, how those things come together, and I think also the kind of my father also worked at a place called the Caprice. It was in Arlington Street, which that one's called. And I was only allowed to go there a couple of times a year. But the couple of times I did go there, it really kind of sat with me. I was like, oh, okay. And I'm a small kid, and there's a lot going on. There was quite well-known people there, and it just had this impact on me.
Was he a musician, your father?
No, my dad was just a restaurant. He ran the Caprice.
Okay.
He was a sort of maitre d' there, but he knew a lot of people, I guess. And both my parents are very night people. I don't think we were really ever at home, really. I don't know. I think I brought myself up, really. And I was thinking. But this one here is called Double Diamond, and in my head, because my dad used to drink a lot of Double Diamond. And I was thinking tonight, I'm walking through this road that's like about diamonds as well. It's just roads about diamonds. And so it works wonders, is the old double diamond phrase, And anyway, so maybe I should be quiet.
Well, now I want to come back with Sharon, because would you call your work abstract?
Yeah.
I noticed that answer was yeah, rather than yes.
Well,
So there's a little bit of
no, I'm not equivocal about it. I see them as abstract paintings.
right.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to confess now. As Vivian said, I used to work at the National Gallery, and 3 of the shows I curated were with abstract artists: Bridget Riley, Sean Scully, and Anthony Caro. And I had to confess to all of them before I started working with them that I don't actually believe abstract art exists. As soon as you put, as I said, 2 colours together, you've created space, a space that one can occupy. As soon as you do that, you have a landscape. Now, I said that to Bridget Riley: as soon as you do that, you have a landscape. And she said, well, that's why I do that. But the last show she had, everything was, and I just sort of let it go. Anthony Caro laughed at my interpretations of his abstract sculpture when I'm seeing them as like bodies and angles creating legs and arms. It just made him laugh. He said, that's all right. And Sean Scully just looked at me, which if you've ever met Sean, that's what he does. He just looks at you. But he said, that's all right if you want to see them as not abstract. And this little run of things here, one of the things that I wrote about in the little text was about watching a shadow on your studio wall as the sun moves through the sky. I mean, the shadows here are fixed, of course, because there's lights that are fixed. But sunlight coming through a window, the shadows will change imperceptibly. I mean, if you actually look long enough, you will be able to see it moving. And I'm sure you've all done it, looked at a clock, trying to watch the minute hand move. Yeah, I can just see it. But that kind of movement within your work tells me that the work is about a real space, and you've watched this happening in a real place that you have occupied.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that idea of the angled light creating a structure that I then went on to use quite a few years ago now, and the architectural structures that appear in the work are a way of me organising the colour relations in the painting. And the colour relations and those structures together make for an experiential relationship with the painting, that the paintings create feelings in the viewers or whatever, if you like. So in that sense, there is a seepage into a lived experience.
Yeah.
So in some ways you can say there are overtones of, like, a more figurative reference, if that's what you...
I don't think figurative is the right word.
Well, seepage outside of the pure.
Seepage is a good word. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at this one over here, where the black in the middle is so far behind. Well, actually, there's 3 layers, aren't there? There's the bottom part of the picture is in our, it's in our world, and you're having to jump past that to get into the picture. The bottom part of it is like if it was a landscape, that would be like hills at the front. And then you can walk through or jump over into the world that exists beyond. You don't like this, do
Well,
you?
I kind of, I think that the work is very much about a balancing of relationships within the tension of the painting, not about walking into a window space, into another world, you know, in that sense. They're quite concrete objects, and I think of them as components within a field which activate each other.
But the balance is not balanced. The balance is quite
No,
unlively.
I quite deliberately unbalanced paintings. I like them to be awkward. I mean, you mentioned awkward earlier on. I don't want them to be
comfortable.
I like the idea that the viewer is often being shifted around and visually, and possibly even, you know, in terms of what am I looking at, what are these colours doing? That they're often quite jarring colours, or they're harmonious colours, but because those colours are active in the painting, they operate on the viewer in a way that the viewer then becomes active in the viewing. Because I guess a lot of my earlier work many years ago was very much influenced by the idea of a participatory experience in painting and a participatory experience in theatre and things like that. I was looking at Brecht and people at the time. So that idea of the interaction of the viewer and the interaction within the painting have been quite significant, I think, in the development of where I am today as a painter.
I like that word participatory, because I think viewers of your pictures, the lack of balance within, with the tension within them, actually forces us to participate within the picture. They become...
You become an active
viewer. They're pictures that are shouting at you. Well, not shouting at you.
Not shouting all
Not
the
shouting. They're saying, come back in 5 minutes and you'll see that I've changed.
Yeah, I'd like to think that they're operational in some way.
Yes. Which brings me back to Laurence's pictures, because they jump all over the place. I mean, this one particularly, of course, is going backwards and forwards because you've got these big arrow shapes. I'm doing it again, making you all have to turn round again. But the kind of jazziness of them is something that I'm struck by, because you have these shapes kind of pointing at one another, never kind of repeating one another, always out to kind of get each other, I imagine, make you in your head reconstruct those sensations of being an unloved child with a glass of whiskey in a smoke-filled music bar.
Yeah, I think that's quite good. Actually, it's a good interpretation. I think and one of the things I was really interested in music, and from a very early age, but and also I liked particularly Clay from a very early age, and he had a very obviously musical background as well. So someone like Clay and his love of gardens became quite integral to the way I wanted to work. I've got this beautiful book about gardens by Clay, actually. My friend suddenly told me that book, Laurence, you've got in your shelf, that's worth a lot of money. And I thought, really? And this little book about gardens and Clay. And my dad was a really big gardener, actually. He always gardens for everybody. And he had this shed, again, at the end of the garden, which had this strange window, which wasn't really part of the shed. He put the window onto the shed, so it wasn't really sitting properly in there. It was like on the front. And that's kind of influences back the piano painting up there quite a lot, in the way he kind of put these strange facades onto the front of buildings and objects. So yeah, that stays with me a lot. And I suppose we're talking about that kind of orchestration of the work. I think my mum was very used to standing up in front and performing a lot in front of people, and it was for me as I'd be like hiding, but she had that kind of energy, you know, to get across. So I suppose I was maybe the energy I have in them is the making of the paintings, really, the making of the constructions. So, and I've used a lot of my old easels part of that one, just there. Coming up because my dad also seemed to collect all my things, never threw anything away. So recently Vivian said to me, "Laurence, I want new work, Laurence, new." And I said, "Okay, I've got it, new work," which for me, of course, went back and getting some more old things and making them new. So I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of the way I like to operate. Really.
So you've talked about clay.
Yeah.
I also know you like Paolozzi
A lot,
and
yeah.
Peter Blake's
Yeah.
1960s things.
Yeah.
Sharon, do you have any artists that you would, and I hate using the word influence, that you feel you might owe a debt to?
Well, yeah, a lot of the Americans, Stella, Noland, lots of artists.
Ellsworth Kelly?
Ellsworth Kelly,
Yeah.
particularly. Well, yeah, I saw the big
Me too.
Ellsworth Kelly show at the Louis Vuitton the other year.
Yeah.
Lots, yeah. I mean, lots of influences, but most colour field painting, and then of course, you know, the classics: Matisse, Picasso, Clay, Moyenage, you know, constructivism.
And
I'm quite an eclectic sort of.
And you've also talked about Quattrocento frescoes in
yeah.
Italian churches.
Yeah.
Do you want to
Well, I think
bring that out a bit?
Well, because I spend time in Italy, and I spent time getting to know fresco techniques in Italy. But in fact, I was thinking about when I'm using gesso and why I use gesso, and when I actually remembered when I started using gesso, which was precisely in 2014, which was an awful long time after I did a Rome scholarship. And it was because it was a suggestion of a friend of mine who was a systems painter, David Saunders, and he said to me, "Why on earth, Sharon, do you do such hard edge paintings on linen and canvas? You know, it's like the wrong material. You should be working on panels with gesso." And it was his suggestion actually that I switched to gesso, nothing at all to do with Italian painting in
Right.
fact. But of course subsequently I realised that what I like about gesso is the embeddedness of the colour, of course, and the fact that it's not sitting on top of, it's part of the materiality of the painting itself.
That the colour soaks in.
Yeah.
Rather than
in a
sitting
fresco technique. Yeah.
on
I
the
mean,
top.
in canvas.
Yeah.
Whatever, it's mostly, unless you're doing stain painting.
Yes.
of course, but I don't work in acrylic, and I'm not doing stain paintings. I'm doing paintings which are very much about tints and tones and solid colour. Although I do use stains as well. So yeah, I mean, I draw on quite a lot of diverse influences,
Yes.
really.
And where do you see, I know this is an impossible question, where do you see the work going? Where will it lead you, this kind of, the way that you're working at the moment? Do you
haven't
see
got a
it
clue.
taking you anywhere?
Not a clue. I mean, one painting kind of leads on to the next painting, you know, things suggest themselves, and I
I've noticed-
experiment and I try that out in the next painting. They're very much an organic, ongoing, intuitive process, really.
Some of your titles are very teasing too, as if there is a specific
Yeah.
visual source, like Japanese fan.
Oh yeah,
Or-
but they're mostly, I mean, they're very much attributed afterwards, you know.
The titles come on afterwards.
Oh yeah, always, in fact.
And your titles, Laurence?
Well, my titles used to be about the colour. We usually call them like double green filtered red. And for a long time I called them that, as I was really interested. I mean, going back to Kelly, I was really interested in the way he titled the paintings. And but then again, recently in a conversation again with Vivian, she said to me, Laurence, she said, I can't quite work out which painting is which. and I said, yeah. And she said, what about if you titled them, gave them another title? I thought, yeah, maybe I will. So I thought to myself that maybe I'll actually call them much more what they are about. So hence they're calling that Arlington Street, and this one's actually called Lemon Drop down the bottom. There's my mum sang a song called Lemon Drop. She sang it like a jazz kind of skit on it. So I thought that would work quite well. Anyway, yeah, so now they've got this very much more specific titling.
It gets difficult, doesn't it?
It does.
I had a whole
It does.
sort of about 5 years of calling mine in part paintings. Like, so many of them with how many parts I'd made to make them up, and it was just becoming like, how do I identify which one is which? So, yeah, but titles are difficult, actually.
They are.
Now, I'm sure that there are people here who have got questions they would like to put to both or one or both of our artists. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then you can fling your hands up and we'll see what you've got to contribute. Now, Laurence, I've asked the question to Sharon.
Yeah.
Do you see your work taking you to anywhere that you haven't thought of just yet?
I think that's a really good question. I think I'm quite governed by materials and how materials operate. So a lot of the way I think is from the materials I find. I mean, I think that's why I like Bellozzi, actually, because he had that very strong sense of finding things. And I think that sort of metamorphosis with Bellozzi was another thing I really have been always interested in. So I think that's how they kind of start in a way, and then that metamorphosis kind of develops from the putting together of the materials. So I guess in a sense, I often, I sometimes find a washer on the street, but I'm happy to pick those up. I think most of the works have got washers in them somewhere, or a kind of idea of a washer in there. I think my dad used to collect this huge thing of washers. I remember that he just had this wire, and more washers.
What, he made necklaces?
He made necklaces of washers. He's got huge.
I'm such an artist.
Yeah, I know, because he was. I think he was very, very creative. And anyway, so that nostalgia for objects and how they operate and how you use them that way, I think, definitely is the way I like to move forward. Yeah, and some people give me things or I find things around Camberwell Art School or stuff like that too.
Yeah, okay. Questions?
It makes me
Yeah.
think of you asking that question about where the work will lead to. It makes me think sculpture. Where we think about all the objects that you've got and how they could become more three-dimensional.
It's a funny thing with
They are sort of they're starting to do that.
Yeah, they are. I think I always like them wedded to the wall. I quite like the wall. I don't know if I could bring them into the same, but I like the wall because of that sort of illusory. I think that works well for me. But I'm happy them actually really coming into the space. That's for sure. And I think that you're right. They're more and more coming into the space in that way.
They kind of do that anyway.
Yeah.
To be fair, and it's interesting the scale of each of the artists' work. How he was saying, Colin, about they're sort of going off into. But then you come back to Laurence's and they go in again, or there's an interesting talking with them both, the work of space and intimacy, and also I think it's interesting the scale of the paintings, why you've both chosen to, Ellsworth Kelly did his very, very big. These are a lot smaller and more intimate, but they're no less in what they're saying.
Well, if I could, I'd like to work at the scale of Ellsworth Kelly, to be honest. I just don't have the facilities.
Yes, is that why you stay? Yeah, it's interesting.
I have made huge paintings,
Have
not
you?
quite on the same scale as Ellsworth Kelly.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, I guess it was Vivian's selection of the work for this show, yeah. and it's an intimate space, and Laurence's work's quite intimate and intricate. So I think curatorial overview was important.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to go back, right back to the beginning, to resolve something which is, was resolved in about 1915, 12 at that time. If you go back to the question, do you mind, the word abstract? Everybody who paints in what is called abstract has the same gap when you ask them, that same slight reserve, because none of us really like the word, because it's used in all sorts of ways that it's not to do with fine art or painting as well. It's a little bit abstract, abstracting by things.
Yeah.
It's a very awkward word, which is why I think that slight hesitation that we heard. But it's also, it was rectified back by Mondrian, who referred to abstract real. So your question about what is it, if it's not, that if it's not real, what is it, as it were? Of course it's real, but it's real in perception. It's real in the idea of how we think about perception. And if we actually just, for God's sake, British people are very bad at it. We always want to have something we can name. We don't have to, and I'm happy to name the shadows in the room or the architecture or all kinds of things, but actually could we not just not name things a little more and just rely on the fact that we are able to have visual perception at work, just like Mondrian talked about, and call it abstract real, and then we don't have to have this irritating conversation that comes up.
Nobody asked you to come.
just saying.
But Mondrian, let's not go there. Let's not go there.
Well, you started it, didn't you?
Yes.
I'm just saying he's quite a good one to use. I mean,
Well, Mondrian's work, of course, he starts off doing trees and windmills and beach scenes, and they get more.
He's writing about abstract.
Artists should never write about their work.
He wasn't. He was writing about the idea, and he was talking about the record. It's in that trilogue book. It's brilliant.
Yes.
And it's talking about the difference between the landscape artist, who is dealing with the sunset, and there's another person in the story, the other one, the three of them, the one who's just there for the experience, just to be there, and he's the one who's the abstract. No, he knows he's the abstract one. But what is it they're taking away when they look at the sunset? What are they going to do with it?
Well,
that's the conversation. Yeah.
I got very interested always in Mondrian in the grid, really, and I think that the grid is very central to my work, and maybe with Sharon's as well. They're kind of working out how that grid operates and how you start to think about that grid. And often the composition for me is activated through the grid. So I think that's a good way. A good way to start for me. I usually start a lot through drawing as well. So that's another.
But is that grid thing to do with your father's classification?
Yes, it sort of is in a way. It is in a way. It allows me to put those kind of classification things together, I think. I'm a big fan of Bryce Marden, for instance, but I think that those very early Mardens really blew me away, and I think I key a lot into his work and that kind of simplicity. And Mondrian,
Yeah.
I'm curious about how you arrive at the colours. I really like the colours in both works, and I think they really attract me, and they're beautiful, and they look all in a way. I'm just wondering, are they preconceived, or do you develop them? Do you overpaint sometimes as well, where you think it's not quite right, or do you make models, or it looks very fresh and spontaneous, which is quite hard to believe when they're so regulated. So that would be interesting. Well, from I guess how do I arrive at the colours? Quite intuitive, and based on probably about 40 years of painting experience. Colours that I use quite regularly, warm greys, cool greys, stuff like that. And I kind of imagine which colours I'm about to use in a painting, but more often than not, using spare paint from the previous painting, because I paint in oil and I have stacks of oil and I use that to condition the next series of paintings, so I'll add mixture things, and so that's when you get a few of the strange greys and whatever, and they set the kind of colour mood or the tonality for the painting, so one painting leads into another in many ways. But sometimes it will just be like, well, you know, I just want to do a really bright yellow painting or something, and you know, or particular colours that I like, you know. And then once you start putting the colours down, the next colours are suggested by the colours that you've put down, because everything has to then interrelate and interact, because the interaction of colour, of course, is paramount in my painting. So one thing then is kind of set in motion that then goes on and has a momentum of its own.
There's a very narrow range of colours in each work. There aren't
in this
many.
particular series, yeah.
But here, often there's 3 max in the works. Do you ever get to a stage in a painting where you've got like 3 colours and you think, oh, that's exactly the wrong colour, and
paint it out. Yeah.
you paint it out, you paint over it,
Yeah.
and that, of course, will affect the colour
Yeah.
that you put on top of
I
it.
changed the colours, yeah.
So it's almost the colour behaving by its own rules.
Yeah, it conditions subsequent decisions, yeah. I mean, it's difficult. Each painting is started differently, but some, like I say, I'm carrying on using leftover paint, a strange mixed grey from a previous painting, because I've got a stack of it, and there is an economy happening here as well. And so that then precipitates the subsequent moves in further paintings, but then, you know, it might just be like a flash of like, it needs an accent, or, you know, it's quite a felt experience.
Yes.
It's not logical in the sense of being somehow deductible in some kind of strategic sense, but it's quite intuitively felt during a process of the evolution of the painting based on colour experience as an artist, you know.
And so do you know when you finish the painting, do you think, right, that's done?
Yeah, more or less. I think that's working, as they say, you know, as we say.
Right.
So
And then,
it's doing enough.
yeah. Right, any more questions?
One there.
Oh, okay. Oh, 2 more. Yeah.
So are the diamonds the last work that you have been doing?
That diamond there on the left is the very last painting in this. Yeah.
Do you think that, because I have seen kind of, you have been kind of painting this vertically shadow, for example, in this painting we can see it, is a way of you keep on talking about that shadow, but between the corporality of the 2 paintings and the 2 vibrations of colors, forcing it, not forcing it, but making us see it clearly. That is a kind of painting from the painting itself. They are painting each other and provoking this kind of mix in color and shape. You know, for example, the separation that you obviously probably looked for, you have generated in each of the pieces creates like a space, but not only like a 3-dimensionality, but also it is being color there. It's a way of perception that we are seeing a kind of lines of color. Is that a next step that you are maybe seeing in your work? Because I have seen a little bit that you were, in other works, talking about these shadows, painted shadows, and that verticality of putting the 2 volumes together with different vibrations. I'm just seeing, for example, that green and the orangey. So in a way you are putting in 3-dimensionality this vibration now. Is your next step? What are your thoughts?
Well, there is a certain amount of shallow illusionism happens when you put colours next to each other, and sometimes might actually suggest a literal shadow, you know. I'm sorry, I'm not following what the question is.
Is your next work more towards a three-dimensionality where the two pieces, for example,
I don't want to go into any kind of heavyweight optical illusionism. No, I kind of keep it under control. I've got an absolute abhorrence of too much trickery in painting, and I like anything to be quite subtle and suggest.
Yes, but that subtlety is coming because of the conversation that are.
Yeah. I guess it's because of the initial.
It's a nice subtlety.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the thing about shadows that Colin started with, and that was brought up in the original essay. In a way, I see the shadows as being structural events that I worked with as a series of things within the painting that I then used as a compositional device, not a literal shadow charting time in some ways. It was slightly cross purposes, but I guess when somebody says to me, oh yeah, and it switches here and it switches there, I immediately freeze and think, oh, that's just too trickery, because I kind of don't like it. I prefer a gentle movement in painting rather than some kind of drastic dynamic spatial theatre.
Right, Jane.
I just wanted to, ones like that, I think they are really subtle, Sharon. And what I really, that tiny little white stripe on the
Yellow.
hands, is it yellow?
Yeah.
On the left-hand side, the black doesn't go right. Things like that beautiful sort of shifting subtlety, and I kind of see it in those plays. And I guess my question to both of you is about because in all of them, it's sort of bringing together these different elements in a sort of a lovely dynamic and play, where perhaps Laurence's or quite intense ones or yours, and with that subtlety. And I'm wondering if I use the word like collage, if that feels like a dirty word, or if that plays any element in your technique, or if you feel you're kind of bringing together elements, or if all that change and shift happened on the surface of the painting, or if it's, I don't know how else to explain.
I guess for my part, I'm sure collage probably applies to Laurence more so than me, but for my part, they're very much found shapes, so they're not found within the painting during the making.
Yeah.
And obviously there are inferences and influences from outside, things seen, which might suggest a certain kind of formal thing within the painting, but for the most part, they're discovered in the making.
Yeah, okay.
But the jamming together of elements obviously has a correlation with collage.
Within the confine of the painting itself, it happens through the layering and discovery.
Yeah, they're very much improvised.
Go on, Laurence.
No, I was going to say that exactly. You're right, Sharon. That for me, I often use collage as a starting point. So finding the colours of keep the coupon, this little ticket down here, that activates a colour for me. So I'd say in a sense that all of those kind of finds a place to kind of spin off. I sometimes get a little bit kind of worried about colour, and I think, what am I going to do to kind of subvert this? Because I end up using too many of my favourite ones. So I sometimes sort of just shut my eyes and choose a colour. And sometimes that's quite a good way of doing it. Or, roll a dice and choose a colour.
Do you roll a dice?
Sometimes. Because in a way, it's quite good sometimes just to subvert that choice that you always want to make. And you always get drawn to the same choices. So I think maybe just to kind of question that.
So when you roll the dice and it comes up with a number you were not expecting, do you think, oh no, you're wrong, dice, I'm going to do it this way?
No, I go with the dice.
You go with the dice?
Yeah, or I go with the blind choice, because sometimes it's a good way to...
And one more thing I'd just like to say about the little yellow stripe. You said just now that it's there, or you said it to stop the black continuing.
Yeah, floating out to the edge,
To me, it doesn't. The black actually continues behind the yellow and carries on all the way down Hatton Garden. for as long as you
You're
want.
talking to yourself now, or
Yeah, no, this is me talking to myself again. What I was saying before about how I'm seeing the things as
I mean, it's a bit
sections.
difficult because it's hung in a weird space, but it's actually not a black, it's a very deep blue.
Right, yeah.
It's like when you see it at eye level,
Yeah.
it's much more materially present, so
Yeah.
there's not quite the spatial rift that you're
Yeah.
talking about floating behind the yellow edge. They're very much paintings which are about surface tensions and materiality as well.
Yeah.
And I think when you see them from a distance, you see them as a void, you know, you're seeing the black as a void, and it isn't, you know, because it's a dark blue, and it's very much about a surface quality, which is a bit difficult to see at the height.
It's a bit like your work on Instagram. It doesn't look the same at all.
No, it's yeah, the material things that you don't. Yeah,
It's not there.
that's the problem with the bloody screen.
So
we know that.
So it's blue. So
Yeah, it's a very deep blue.
It's the
it's a blue
sea.
that I get out of Pisa. It's not the sea, no. It's from Pisa painting that I've seen in Pisa. It's a mixed blue,
Yes.
measured to a certain, a Pisan blue, I call it.
now suppose some idiot comes along and says, "I see that." Like when I look at Mondrian, I see a bit of blue at the top and a bit of red down there, and I see the earth and the sky, even though it's one of those like 30s abstract things. And seeing that red colour as foreground that you're looking over to distant space, and blue is a colour of distance. Suppose some idiot comes along and says that. What do you think? And that's not.
Well, people are entitled to their interpretation. You know, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that.
Whatever grabs you, you know, it's fine by me. You know. I'm not in control of how the painting is received.
Well, that's it. Once an artist sends something out, a picture out into the world, the picture's on its own. It hasn't got the artist to tell you what it's about.
Peter's got a question here.
Oh yeah.
Well, two things. First of all, there is a debate about this, or a book about it, about seeing Gombrick's book, Art and Illusion,
Oh, yeah.
about seeing into things,
Yeah.
which I think that's what you're doing. You don't mind?
Yeah.
You know, this is really something else. This is really a seafront or something. It's, I suppose, just plenty. But I wanted to ask Laurence about the objects, the found objects in his work. And do you get the object and then make a work around it, or not? How? Because they're quite loaded objects, aren't they? Because they're your father's.
Quite often they do start object, because I probably get a bit lost in what they mean to me in some ways. So some of them, like that little blue circle over there that's in that playground painting, I found that fairly recently when I started making that. And I guess in a way some of my paintings operate a little bit like portals.
But you start the painting and then copy up, build
it around, because sometimes also
Which one? Object first or painting first?
a bit of both, I'd say.
I mean, you could argue the paintings are frames, aren't they? They're elaborate frames almost.
I'll give you an example. With that one, he collected wood a lot as well as objects. So the wood I found in the garage. Yeah. So I started with those two forms and put them together. They're one of them's like a doorstop underneath the garage, in the garage, and the other thing is just a found piece of art I found in the garage. So I just started to think, well, I'll just start to place them together, see what happens. And then I started to think about them as these kind of portals to another time or place. And then going back to that sort of grid, I started with a grid to construct the space. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
So in a way, they're all like portraits, aren't they?
They are a little bit.
You should call them all portraits.
I should do, but I think...
Sorry.
Use your tools.
I don't mean that literally.
No, I mean, I think they're very autobiographical objects. Yeah, I think that's how they operate a lot. They're autobiographical objects. And you know, they have connotations. But at the same time, I've always been very interested in abstraction, and I make, you know, I've got two spaces, one at home, which is a smaller place, and maybe all the small things kind of do get made there a lot. And then I go to the studio and I think, okay, you know, I could make something larger that responds to that. So I suppose that's perhaps something else, the way they operate.
So is this painting, do you see that very differently? It has no objects, it's bigger.
It is made with objects because the templates are made from the objects.
Oh, okay.
So although it ostensibly looks like a kind of abstract painting, there isn't any abstraction in it, of course. And I use the found templates to make the shapes. That's really how they're orchestrated.
So the object is all absolute but present.
Exactly. That's exactly how it operates. So and those again were found objects in garages or sheds.
Right.
I think one more.
One more. Yeah.
Quite fun for both of you, I think. So I was hearing about your intuition with your painting and how it's through your experience and your decision making that you can kind of formulate some. And you were almost saying that you were relying on dice sometimes, and that's a bit of a free form.
I think the chance thing.
Yeah, the chance thing, and
I like chance and order.
And like disrupting your decision making.
Yeah.
So my question is really, do you often have to give up on a painting because maybe your intuition wasn't right or your dice was wrong? Like, does that often happen, or can you keep working on it?
You can come up with a painting that you're not too keen on and think that's not such a good one, but
right.
I guess one tends to try and battle through and save something out of what's happening.
So you would always try to get to a finish?
Yeah, you change things and you resolve them, But obviously there are moments when they're not working. It's an ongoing, you live through a painting, you change and rearrange and adjust.
Okay, so it's often you wouldn't give up on the work, you would always...
I don't very often throw them away, no. I mean, but I would sort of end up thinking, well, I'll leave it, it's not so great, but I can't be bothered anymore.
Because there's not many decisions in that one behind you.
No, but there's an awful lot of experience before those decisions, as they will say.
Yeah, right, okay. Right.
I mean, for me, I think I keep things a long, long time, and I might have something sitting in the studio that's been there for 10 years, and I might just go and pick it up again. So I think I'm all right with that. I think things come back, don't they? I agree with Sharon. I don't often throw things away either. Well, I don't do that anyway.
Well, you try and make them work.
Terrible hoarder.
You take them and you try and make them work. You resolve the issues. Yeah,
exactly. So
and it's an expensive business.
Yeah, definitely.
Throw away, something that's cost you an awful lot of money.
There's a great. I really like Basil Beatty, and he said, "Oh, I'll do anything to make the work work." I'll just like.
He said he'd do anything
to make the work. Yeah. Anything, and I thought that's
to make it work.
Yeah, to make it work.
Yeah.
And I thought that's tremendous because I just thought, it's just got it. That's
I think it's because when you push your boundaries to sort the things out, you find out that there is beautiful things going on, and you can use them for maybe it's the new goal.
Yeah, you need to surprise yourself all the time.
It's a way also of you forcing with the dice the thing, It's a way of always, because at the end the work is gonna bring you to yourself, to your way of seeing things and and expressing yourself. So in a way, it's a more challenging way of doing things, which I love.
I think I like to challenge myself. I think I live with it.
Right, are we all done?
Any more questions?
Well, thank you everybody for coming. It's a very impressive turnout. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as, or even half as much as I've enjoyed it. And enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.